Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA video for Thursday, February 18th. The NBA is finally back, even though it's only a 3-game slate, but it's still nice to be able to have some NBA DFS to look forward to. Since it is such a short slate, what we're going to do is give you 3 guys that we really like for tonight that are going to be on a lot of our tournament and also our cash game rosters. 3 guys who we think are reasonably priced that you can definitely build a nice lineup around. So let's call up the slideshow and talk about the guys who we really like for this evening. The 3 guys who we think are very reasonably priced this evening on DraftKings are LaMarcus Aldridge at $6,900, DeAndre Jordan at $7,600, and Kyrie Irving at $8,000. Now, Aldridge is in one of the better games to target today. It's got a total over 200, and the spread on this game is close, so we should be able to see full run out of everybody who's a starter or, a significant minute player on both of these teams. The Clippers have no good person to match up with Aldridge at the power forward spot. As long as Blake Griffin is out, they've been rolling out guys like Mbah Moute and Paul Pierce and Lance Stevenson and, Wes Johnson, and basically just throwing a whole bunch of small forward options out there and kind of going with 4 smalls with DeAndre Jordan in the middle kind of lineup. That can work against a lot of teams. I don't think it's going to work very well against the Spurs, as LaMarcus Aldridge is going to eat up alive whichever one of those smaller forwards they throw on him. He's been averaging 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 defensive stats, either steals or blocks, over his last 8 games. So he's giving you a really nice return of 35 to 40 fantasy points as kind of a floor. He's seeing about 32-ish minutes a game, which is a bump for him. It's up a little bit from what he was playing earlier in the year. So with Aldridge playing a few more minutes in a game that's expected to be close, and with him putting up, 35 to 40 fantasy points at a price of only $7,000, we think he's a very good bet to get you that 5x value that you need at the bottom, and also a good bet to be able to get you 6x or more and give you the upside you're looking for in the tournament. All right, hold on one second here. We've got a little bit of an issue with the slideshow here to go on to the next slide. So give me 1 second and let me see if I can get this fixed for you. The next guy that we're going to be talking about is DeAndre Jordan here. Now, DeAndre Jordan is somebody who is probably not going to be the highest owned guy today, which is actually why I really like him in tournaments as well as in cash games, because I do think he's in a very good spot. The guy who I think will be the highest owned at the center position is probably going to be Pau Gasol, which is something that we tend to see kind of often whenever, Jimmy Butler's out there. I understand where everybody's coming from that likes Pau Gasol today. I do realize that, when Butler's out, he gets a much higher usage rate. And that's definitely something that you got to be concerned with. But for me, I think DeAndre Jordan's the guy that I'm looking to go up and get at the center position. He's $1,100 cheaper than Pau Gasol, which is the first thing. The total in that game is 207, which is pretty nice. And it's, -4 spread, same game that we just talked about with Aldridge going up against the Spurs. Now, on paper, this is a pretty tough matchup, but Duncan is probably not going to see huge minutes in this game, with it being his first game back and with him kind of being – they're kind of taking the foot off their gas a little bit to save him for the stretch run. We will see DeAndre Jordan draw some defense from both David West and maybe even some Boban defense, which are 2 guys that I think he can do much better against. He's basically averaging 16 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks over the last 6 games, which has been good for about 47 fantasy points. About 38 fantasy points would be what we need as a floor for him at 7,600. If he can get us over 45 fantasy points, that would mean he's given us better than 6x. So for a guy that's been averaging 47 fantasy points over his last 6, is likely to see his full allotment of minutes here and, should have a good rebounding game coming up. I think that DeAndre Jordan at 7,600 is probably my favorite guy for upside on the day at the center position. The last guy I want to talk about here is Kyrie Irving at $8,000. Now, he's playing in a game. His team, the Cleveland Cavs, have the highest projected team total on the day at about 112 points. They face a Chicago team that has not been able to stop point guards all year. We talk about it all the time that Derrick Rose is one of the worst at defending point guards at this point in his career. So it's a good matchup for anybody that's going up against Chicago. The other reason why I really like Kyrie, he's priced about $1,000 less than Chris Paul, and I think $1,600 less than John Wall. Yet he basically has the same ceiling as these two guys. A good game out of Paul or Wall, you would expect 50 to 55 fantasy points. Well, Kyrie in his last 3 games has gone for 43 fantasy points, 59 fantasy points, and 54 fantasy points. So he basically has the same ceiling as these guys do for $1,000 cheaper, which means he has a lower threshold for him to reach his floor. If we his floor. If we could get 40 fantasy points out of Kyrie Irving, that would be 5x and would probably be good enough to give us a solid return today. You would need 45 out of Chris Paul and like 49 out of John Wall just for them to hit their floor value of 5x based on their price today. For any of them to be 6x or better, you would need 48 points out of Kyrie Irving, which again, he's basically been averaging over that in his last 3 with a 59 and a 54 in his last 2, which would be big upside games. Whereas for John Wall, you would need somewhere around like 58 points for him to get some kind of upside for you. And Chris Paul, you would need about 54. So you have a lower threshold with Kyrie Irving, yet you have the same kind of upside and the same kind of floor as you do with the other 2 guys. So for me, with him being in probably one of the best spots on the day as well, I would rather save the $1,000 and come down to Kyrie than go up and pay for a John Wall or a Chris Paul when I could better use that money elsewhere. So those are the 3 guys that I really like, 3 guys that are going to be in a lot of my lineups. Depending on how the value opens up later on in the day, you may be able to fit these 3 in and then still have enough money left over to go get one of the studs that you might want, whether that be a Chris Paul or a John Wall, or maybe even paying up for LeBron James at the small forward spot. Right now we don't have too many injuries to really help open up some of that value for us. So that's another reason why I kind of like these guys in the mid-range. When you start building rosters, as it is right now with the guys that we know are the cheaper value plays, if you pay up for a guy like a Wall and a Paul and you put them together in your lineup, you really don't have a lot of money left over for the other positions. You're taking some pretty big chances and some pretty big reaches. Guys like Tony Parker and Tim Duncan are needed to round out some of those rosters with guys that you really like. Kawhi Leonard is pretty good price. I think he's a pretty solid play for today as well. With some of the guys that we mentioned, or a guy like Kawhi Leonard, you could stay in that mid-range today from top to bottom of your roster and build a roster that you feel really strongly about. So that's the way I'm going to go about doing it on this 3-game slate. Hopefully it works out pretty well for me and the rest of you guys tonight. And, as always, we'll be back tomorrow on the big 14-game slate to give you a lot more information. Make sure you get over to the RotoCurve page, sign up for an account if you haven't. Everything's free over there. There's a lot of tools that we have over there that you can use to help you with NBA, things that point out the best games to target, things that point out games that are potential blowouts, pointing out DVP, guys in good positions, all the stuff that you would really want in order to build some good upside rosters. So make sure you go over there or follow us at rotocurve.com. You can follow me at BennyR11 over on Twitter as well. And as always, stay classy, DFS.